I could be wrong, but I believe that every single teacher out there remembers his or her first classroom. The way it looks empty and full of potential when you first walk in, the desks, the board, the textbooks. This was my first classroom as a real full-time teacher, and yes, that is an old school chalkboard. My journey to this room was not easy, and I only ended up staying in it for a year. It was certainly not in a place I would have expected, but I'm eternally grateful for the strange path that took me to this room and changed my life. I was born and raised in small town Ohio. My graduating class had only 83 students. Being the good student who loved school, I graduated high school from Springfield Local as salutatorian in 2010. After high school, I earned a Bachelor of Science in Integrated Language Arts Education from Kent State University, located near Akron, Ohio, in 2014. In my final semester, Kent State hosted a teacher interview day event. Similar to a job fair, administrators from 36 local school districts set up booths and conducted 15-minute interviews throughout the day. Like the other future teachers nearing graduation, I showed up in my brand new professional attire with about 20 copies of my resume and about 20 pounds of trepidation. I had already contacted as many districts as possible and already had a nearly full schedule of interviews for the day. In the morning, I visited booths to try to fill in the rest of my schedule. I quickly found myself in front of the booth from Pasadena, Texas. I hadn't entirely considered moving so far away, but at that point in my student teaching, I wasn't entirely happy either. I had been considering an online school and had interviews lined up with several. After talking to the Texan representatives, I realized that I didn't want to abandon the physical classroom, but I definitely needed something drastically different from what Ohio schools had to offer. Those Texan representatives were impressed enough by my knowledge of pedagogy and best practices to invite me, along with a couple other hopeful candidates, to travel to Pasadena, Texas and interview with each individual high school in the district. And so we did. The entire trip was a whirlwind. I traveled with a future math teacher to share gas and hotel expenses. We took my Volkswagen Bug and drove about 24 hours from Kent, Ohio to Pasadena, Texas, stopping only for food and gas. We arrived on a Wednesday morning, met with a representative from Human Resources who took us on a tour of the district campuses and gave us a schedule of interviews for the next day. Thursday, we started our day at 7 a.m. and went through full-length interviews at 5 of the 6 high schools in PISD. At the end of the day, we both had job offers from 2 of those 5. We went back to our hotel to compare notes over the day and consider which school would be the best fit. We met with some teachers who had made the same life-changing decision to move from Kent to Texas the year before. We liked their apartment complex and decided to live there as roommates. The next morning, Friday, we returned to those 2 schools to make our decisions. Friday afternoon, we signed paperwork with Human Resources and with the apartment, and then loaded back into the car and took the 24-hour journey back to Ohio, now as South Houston High School Trojans. Deciding to move to Texas was scary. I took this selfie sitting in a CiCi's Pizza with my future roommate in a town I would soon be moving to, and I was a mixture of emotions, from excited to frightened. I didn't know anybody in Houston. I have family in New Mexico, but it's still a 13-hour drive to where they live. I had never lived more than an hour away from home, and I'd spent the last 2 years of college living at home with my mom. But at least I would have a roommate who was in the same position I was, until she decided to stay in Ohio. Suddenly, I was faced with moving across the country entirely alone. I would be living alone in a new city, the 4th largest in the country, the complete opposite of my small, rural hometown. I could have changed my mind. I could have found a job in Ohio and stayed home. But I knew that if I didn't take this chance, this risk, I would spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? I was only committing myself to 1 year at South Houston High School, 1 year in my apartment, 1 year in Texas. If it didn't work out, if I wasn't happy so far away from my family, I could always come back the next summer. But I would know that I tried. I took the risk. Failing in this Texan adventure wouldn't mean the end of me. I would always have my Ohio home waiting for me. And more than anything, I knew that I wanted to take this jump. I wanted to live in Texas. I wanted to teach in Texas. Looking back now, I am grateful every single day that I took the risk that led me to this classroom. Growing up, I always knew I would spend most of my life at the front of a classroom. I didn't know the front of that classroom would have a Texas flag under the American flag. After my apartment lease was up, I purchased my home in nearby Baytown, Texas. I met my husband during that year working at South Houston High School, and I'm starting a new path teaching junior high this year. I love teaching, and I'm getting my master's in curriculum and instruction at the University of Houston to take my teaching career to the next level. If I hadn't taken that risk, I might be just as happy living in Ohio, but I would always wonder what my Texas life would have been. I have the privilege of knowing that I am where I belong, all because I didn't let fear of failure hold me back. I think this Facebook post from April sums it up quite well. It's been stressful, it's been exciting, it's been a roller coaster. I can't imagine life any other way.